here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, is this a good idea? Because you are leaving yourself open to all sorts of criticism as a family if you let cameras into your house.
I have to admit I had big reservations, and Jacob gave all his children the choice whether to appear or not, and
Right.
I discussed it with my own because we were in Somerset over the summer and the camera crews were around, and in fact me and my husband decided that our children would not be in it at all.
Right.
The two younger ones didn't really know what the question was, and the 13-year-old was happier to not be in the spotlight. And they never have been. And I think that's where Jacob took less of a risk, because his children have been photographed left, right and centre from the day they were born, in newspapers, in cartoons, taking the mickey out of their names and whatever.
Are they going to become the new Kardashians? Does your brother even know who Kim Kardashian is?
Oh, I'm not entirely sure I do. So, yeah, she's very famous for being quite curvaceous, I believe.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're anywhere near that category. I've seen a couple of articles where they do a compare and contrast, and they don't really match up. But I think this is quite from the bits I've seen, quite a light-hearted look at a very different type of lifestyle to most people, but at the people behind it who are, you know, normal human beings.
And Jacob's wife there, we saw talking. What is she like? What are we expecting to hear from her?
Helena's brilliant. I had the great pleasure of introducing them as adults.
Your fault.
It's all my fault that there are now 6 extra Rees-Moggs around. But she is a fantastic, fun, but very, very steely, as you say, woman who knows her own mind.
I think she's going to be the star of the show.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's Newspapers Tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out what new planning rules could see happening in your backyard, which colour person isn't allowed to get a job at MI5, that guy'd be fine, and how the immigration process might not be done to the highest standards. I'm Stephen Allen, and tonight I've got Josh Howie and Nick Dixon taking you through tomorrow's top stories. This is Headliners. But before tomorrow's news, let's get tonight's headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Stephen, thank you. Good evening. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is in Moscow with his family and has been granted asylum on humanitarian grounds. That's according to Russian state media. It comes as people are emptying the streets as rebel forces impose a curfew in Damascus after taking control of the capital, marking a dramatic fall in Assad's regime and forcing him to flee. US President Joe Biden has called it a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future. Here in the UK, around 100 Syrians gathered in Piccadilly Circus in London to celebrate the fall of the Assad regime. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office has been evacuating British nationals ahead of the offensive, though exact numbers remain unclear. And the Prime Minister says the UK welcomes the fall of Assad's barbaric regime.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward. And it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. But very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
Strong winds are hammering the UK just days after Storm Dara left 2 men dead and thousands without power. A yellow weather warning is in place with gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, threatening more blackouts and travel chaos. Tens of thousands of people are facing a second night without power after the widespread disruption caused by the storm. Flooding fears are rising too, with over 200 alerts issued across England, Wales and Scotland. In other news, a man has died in a fire in Cumbria, with emergency services on the scene and people warned to stay away from the town. Cumbria police said the victim in his 40s was found in the property in Kirby Lonsdale and pronounced dead at around 6:30 a.m. The fire broke out at the apartments opposite the Red Dragon pub in Main Street. And the Prince of Wales has met US President-elect Donald Trump during a ceremony to mark the reopening of Notre Dame in Paris. That's 5 years after it was devastated by a fire. Prince William joined world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, for the landmark event. Kensington Palace described the Prince's meeting with Trump as warm and friendly, with discussions focusing on the UK-US special relationship and global issues. Trump praised William as a good man and doing a fantastic job and shared fond memories of the late Queen, which the Prince was said to appreciate deeply. President Macron, in his speech, called the restoration a lesson of fragility, humility and will. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's front pages. We've got 3 comedians working our way through them. Before we get stuck into the papers, let's have a quick taste of what Josh and Nick will have to work with on Monday's front pages. The Metro goes with Assad falls, but what now? The Express has delight in Syria as rebels force Assad to flee to Russia. The Telegraph, Assad flees to Moscow. The Mail, Assad is toppled, but is worse to come. The Guardian, you can see the theme already, can't you? Rebels seize Damascus as Assad flees to Moscow. But the Star goes with "'Tis the season to be jolly windy," which I don't think is about the same story. So let's find out. Josh, let's get stuck in The Guardian.
Yeah, big story of the day. Rebels seize Damascus as Assad flees to Moscow. And what you've got is a lot of people trying to sound like they know what's going on in Syria.
Thank heavens. You can carry on doing that, then I can just sit here and...
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of experts have been created overnight going, yeah, I know where Syria is on the map, and so I can't pretend to be one of those people. I won't even say that I am an expert. Assad killed 500,000 of his own people, some of them with chemical weapons, and the fact that he's gone for humanitarian purposes is a good thing. He was an evil human being. The question is, of course, what does he get replaced with?
Yeah, but that still can't be it can't be a reason to not get rid of someone. But
No.
The people themselves are happy about it. This is kind of what you hope. This is step one, the thin end of the wedge, and maybe there could be, you know, a bit of a rejig. Some people uprise and get rid of the people in charge. You know, the Crink nations. It's not good news for the Crink nations.
Yeah, no,
it's a good thing, isn't it?
It is a good thing, but again, people are being cautious, and I think rightly so, because HTS, which is the sort of the largest of the rebel groups, you call it, you know, come from an Islamist background. Now, they're saying all the right stuff, democracy and this and that, but we know how easily that can just not be true.
Yeah, not trustworthy.
There's a question whether there'll be any sort of peaceful transfer. But remember when the Taliban promised to be woke, so you can't necessarily trust these things. But yeah, I've become an expert on Syria. It's
thank heavens.
Yeah, overnight I don't understand it all. Yeah, people have remarked on the speed of it because these guys were in Idlib in the northwest, the HTS, but then they took Aleppo. It could almost be ad-lib because they took Aleppo city much easier than they thought. So then he went on to take Hama and then Homs, and so it's just going south, and that's 100 miles north of Damascus, and then they took Damascus. And people were amazed how easily they fell, which is because of the weakness of the Syrian infrastructure and general morale, and Hezbollah not helping them out because they've been decimated by Israel. So it was much easier than anyone thought, is the big takeaway that I've heard today. That's and there's loads more we can say, but we've got about 4 stories, so we don't want to. And they're all about Syria, so I'm just pacing it for you, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing
I've turned into Leo Kurz overnight. I know about the weapons, I know the locations. I've got a map on. I've got a corkboard at home. I've got the main people pinned to the wall. Carry on.
Well, I mean, this story did surprise a lot of people because we weren't talking about it for ages. We all remember back in the David Cameron days, the vote. It was kind of the time when we stopped being as interventionist. It was a surprise when Parliament voted to not really.
It was actually a disgraceful vote, and Ed Miliband also has to take responsibility part for that, for playing politics and then they're both trying to sort of out.
Yeah.
Each, you know, it was a moral choice at the end of the day. There was evidence that Assad had used chemical weapons. He should have been absolutely removed at that point by a coalition of people in the West, and everyone got cold feet because obviously, look, I understand the reticence, what happened in Iraq, I get it. But at the same time, there was a moral choice there, and they made the wrong decision.
Yeah, stand by and do nothing.
And 500,000 people died because of it.
And now we're here. All right, so I mean, should we move on to... is there anything else on the front page to spare us before we go back to the same
Mike
story?
Lee and Marianne Jean-Baptiste basically talking about Mike Lee, famous film director, and I believe Marianne, I think she was the actress in one of his movies. Anyway, basically saying there's an intolerance in society now, and... yeah, we've been talking about it on this channel for a couple of years.
Does he not watch? Or is that where he gets it from?
Well, I don't think he's talking about the kind of intolerance that we've been talking about necessarily. Interestingly.
We're talking about lactose intolerance. Is that the one we've been doing?
Well, they are sort of lovey actor types, so possibly.
They definitely can't do gluten.
No.
All right, we'll move on to the Telegraph. Nick, what have they got for us?
Yeah, so they've got Assad flees to Moscow, and that's the angle there. And he was granted asylum on humanitarian grounds. So that's...
because Putin himself is a great humanitarian.
He's a good guy. So...
there'll be an award in it, won't there?
Yes, and they also remark on the swiftness of the whole thing, as we've already said. And Russia is interesting, actually. Does this weaken Russia? I mean, Russia have deployed, obviously, resources to Ukraine, which has made them weaker in Syria. But people, even Trump has said this, some people think Russia's better off out of Syria because it's a distraction for them. And even Trump said that. I don't know if it's like a double bluff when Trump says that. So probably what happens is Russia are weakened somewhat. Iran are definitely weakened. Israel is stronger. Turkey is stronger. Because now there's this thing with Turkey versus the Kurdish forces, who are the SDF. And Turkey, I believe their lot are called the SNA, but they've now, as far as I know, taken over this town, Mabij. Is it called? I think it's... someone can correct my pronunciation.
You're the one who Googled this, mate. You've been on Twitter all day,
It's
haven't
incredible. So the Turkish forces are threatening the Kurdish forces, and the big question is, one of the big questions, will the USA pull out of helping the Kurds, the SDF, which Trump said he would do in the past? The problem with that is the current US position is they're there because of ISIS. They have this base in the southeast. They're there and they remain there because if Turkey gets too aggressive and takes out too many of these Kurdish forces, they can't suppress ISIS anymore. So the official line from the US is that they remain there because of ISIS. But the feeling was with Trump that he promised Erdogan in 2019 that he would come out of there and not support the SDF anymore. But so his question is, what will Trump do when he gets in, and how bullish will he be versus how isolationist? That's another angle.
See, I very much agree with what Nick was saying. I would point out it's the northeast that they're
Who?
the American forces are in at the moment.
They've got the base. It's in a place called Al Tamf. I can't really pronounce it.
It's lovely, lovely.
900.
Yeah.
900 of them. Just adding some more flavour.
Honestly, Google must have absolutely seen your spike.
Going in. Yeah, it's very, very complicated. There are so many. It's like reading up on this stuff. It's just there are so many different groups. There are so many acronyms.
Well, I was worried to find out one was SNA, which are my initials, so I'm going to get some flack.
Yeah.
Someone will tweet me if that's wrong. I think it's right. And the Kurdish are definitely SDF.
Right. Yeah.
And so Turkey have come out stronger. I mean, and this is the thing. And I think Israel. Most people think Israel will come out better because obviously Iran are weak, and Turkey was supporting the rebels, so they're winning on that grounds, and they want to take over Syria. Let's see. It's very complicated as Josh.
But I think for the Russians, this is pretty terrible. I mean, they're arguing they're going to lose these bases. One of them is a coastal base. It was very important strategically. They've been there since the war.
Tartus is one of the bases the Russians have, and it's going to be they're going to lose that. Yes, it probably is bad for them. It's just I heard on GB earlier this other angle. And it is possible that it was a distraction. Trump was like, "What are Russia doing there anyway? They shouldn't even be in there." But certainly Putin is focused on Ukraine. It's weakening his position in Syria.
Anything else that's fun on the front page?
Yeah, there is actually. There are some other news stories.
Yay!
Well, one of them here is that I won't set the FBI on my foes, insists Trump. Yeah. Because he's just a good guy, and he was just like, all that stuff during the election, certainly back in the day, remember he was going, we're going to jail Clinton and jail Hillary and all. And then he got in, and he was like, just joking.
But he only said he'd be a dictator on day one. So as soon as day two kicks around, he's back to not being
he's doing the old, the greatest revenge is just to be successful. Right. That's how he's going to stick it to
I've had breakups like that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. I'd rather just get the revenge, personally. That's the way I feel about it.
I think you'd take day one, wouldn't you? If it was Assad or if it was these new guys, HCS, if they said, "Oh, you're going to be a dictator on day one," wouldn't the whole of NATO be like, "Brilliant, that's amazing"?
We'll go on holiday.
With Trump, it's like a bad thing, like only on day one. They're like, "That's terrible." Anyone else around the world, you'd be like, "Can you commit to that?"
But also, it's that thing of like, you get 3 wishes and then you make the first wish for another 1,000
Another million, infinite wishes.
I'm just going to be dictator for day one, and then but that day one will be...
Gives me infinite days.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also tax raid leads to sharp slump in hiring. So this is Rachel Reeves, what some people are saying is a disastrous her national insurance tax raid.
Yeah.
And that is affecting business. A lot of people complaining about it, a lot of business owners, small business owners, and this is having an impact now.
So one pushback on that is they would, wouldn't they? If ever you're told you're about to pay more national insurance, make some noise that it's really bad, scare them to take that increase away from you. So
I think you could argue for anybody paying more tax is bad. And
tax always slows down the economy. It's half of the tax and spend coin, isn't it? And the only thing that could be good is spending, because tax is always going to slow down an economy.
It's a very intricate thing. Fortunately, she is an expert economist who has worked at many banks.
Always been an economist.
And much
She Googled it last night as well, so it's
she was an economist when she was born, that's what I heard.
And then, Josh, we can take a quick look at the Times, what's happening there.
Yeah,
let me have a guess.
Syrians! But they've got some photos of the statue being pulled down. And that's good, because it's always nice to see those photos. And one day, maybe the Keir Starmer statue will be pulled down.
They've got to build it.
Yeah, be the 4th plinth. But, so we always like to see... I would suggest anywhere that has a giant statue of its leader, that statue should be pulled down. That's a sign of an unhealthy country.
What about
democratically.
Don't we have Churchill?
OK, no, you're right. Take it back. Don't clip it. Well, no, but his one is wooden, and it's not wood. Is stone.
It's not massive.
It's stone. It's not. It's a humble statue. Whereas this stuff is, look at this. You could see proportionally it's like triple, and also they're made out of metal and things like that. Yeah. So Churchill's one is a stone. So I got out of that. Did I get out of that? I don't know. We'll see. There is another big story here, housing shake-up. So this is Angela Rayner. She wants to strip councils of the power to veto these developments and instead push it to mayors, because there's some contradictory messaging here, because she's sort of saying that newts are more protected than people, and what we need is a process that protects nature unless it's standing in the way of Which one do you want to do? Are we going to have the newts or the... You can't say you're going to protect nature and then actually, no, you know what, forget those newts.
As long as it's... Look,
squish the newts.
If evolution hasn't taught these newts to not live where we need to build houses, it's their own stupid fault, isn't it?
Exactly.
She's had a bit of a howl, hasn't she, Raina? She was in that interview with Trevor Phillips. He was saying, well, look, most of these houses anyway be taken up with immigrants, and she said no, but she really struggled. It actually was an abstract failure. Remember when she said the Tories have been an abstract failure, and she meant abject? This actually was, because it was a failure of abstract reasoning. Like, if there's going to be a certain level of immigration, a certain level of houses, yes, they will inevitably take up most of the houses.
The argument is there's already space for them elsewhere, although surely that space would be available already. It's like there is just one pool of space, isn't there?
Yeah, that was a tricky one when she said there's plenty of housing already, but there's not enough for the people that desperately need it. I'm no expert. Yeah. Not like I'm in Syria, but I struggle to understand that sentence.
Halfway through that sentence, the news must have been like, yes, there's plenty of houses.
You're a big 4D chess fan.
Yeah, love it.
Do you think that Keir Starmer deliberately set her up to fail?
Yeah. That's more like 1 or 2D.
I'm not very good at chess. Just for me, it's like, do you know the rules of chess?
That is more backgammon, but yeah, he's sent her out there. Yeah, I see what you mean. Isn't that always the case with Raina? Aren't you sending her out there potentially to fail?
I don't. I mean, it's high stakes for her. She has to get this done, and it seems like she's pushing stuff through. The criticism would be that it's whether mayors also have the technical knowledge to push this stuff through, or they just want this stuff to happen, where they can really see the big picture.
Yeah, the mayors aren't unfireable, but she is. So her position's absolutely set in stone. She can't be shifted, where the mayors are going to be thinking, like, what's going on here?
Yeah. In that context, she's done quite well, because if you couldn't be fired, would you bother doing any research, Steve? I mean, Lewis already doesn't, but if you imagine he was set in stone for life.
Just the pride of a good job.
That's all the front pages examined, sorted out those. But still to come, why the sped-up immigration system will slow things down, and which big name might be joining reform. We don't know, but we'll have a guess on the way next. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's about Generation Z spending 6 hours a day online. Generation Z, which age group is that?
That's 16 to 24.
OK, great.
Now, this could explain why there's 1 million young people aged between 16 and 24.
100%.
Not working.
Work.
Yeah.
And I did a TV show and we're talking about it, and the lefty person I was on with was making excuses for the fact that we've got 9 million people unemployed. And this woman, this mom, rang in and she was hilarious. And I thought she was going to have a go at me. She said, "Carol Malone." I thought, here we go, another one. And she goes, "You are absolutely right." She said, "I've just thrown my son out of the house, who's 24. She said, my husband and I," she said, "we worked all our lives, 2 jobs, to get him to college, to get him to a private school."
Yeah.
She said, "He hasn't worked a day."
No.
And his attitude was, "Why should I?" And you think... And she said he spends all day online.
On his phone.
That's all he's
Because
doing.
we would have gone to get a job because we were bored. And the trouble is, Jonathan, the younger generation are never, ever bored because the algorithms keep them stimulating.
Well, the dopamine hits keep coming. I think it's actually a problem for all of us. Yeah. You know, now for anyone, if you just have a moment to yourself, a lot of people of all ages, what do we reach for? We reach for our phones, particularly for those. Obviously, if we're with a friend, we'll talk to them.
Your age group, you're not talking about...
I know that. I've spoken to a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who also will just, you know, if they have a free minute on the tube or whatever, they'll just look at their phone and read. And it's actually terrifying because on the iPhone every Monday it tells you how much time you spent on your phone the previous week, and it's
for you?
On average per day?
Fair few hours. I mean, a lot of that will be work.
Give us a ballpark. Oh, more than 5?
Occasionally 5. Yeah.
Well, better things to do. Spending 6 hours a day.
Do you never read a book?
Well, that'll be at night time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen, still joined by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. You can get involved and join in with us with your comments. You can go to gbnews.com/your say. Here's one from Alison, who says, SNA seems to be less lefty since this shower came into government. Alison, you're saying the Syrian National Army... Very confusing. I guess you've been Googling it. Josh, we can move on to The Telegraph. A sad study to be a dentist. So there's another reason not to like him.
Yes, so this is tangential to what we've kind of been talking about.
Trans what?
Transgenitals. Tangential.
We just can't not talk about
No, that's the next section. Yeah. Britain's Syrian refugees vow to return home after fall of regime. So this is an interesting consequence of world events, is that we have many people here, but more so in Germany. I think it's like 1.5 million. Turkey, I think it's got 3 to 4 million. Lebanon's got about 1.5 million. There's a huge proportion of the Syrian population have gone to try and, stay alive.
Yeah, away from the chemical weapons.
Yeah, exactly, to other countries, including coming to this country, and have been gathering in celebration that they can now go home. And the question is, how many people are actually going to make that decision and want to go back to their homeland to rebuild the country and make it successful? And how many people are going, yeah, I quite like it here? This article seems to suggest that it leaves it sort of unclear. They're like, we're going to go home on holiday. That seems to be the gist of some of it. But it is interesting in terms of asylum claims. What's going to happen there? Are they still people who are seeking asylum here who hasn't gone through yet? Are they still going to be able to claim or not?
Interesting, yeah, because their life wouldn't be at risk.
Well, or not, because we don't know what's going to replace it. They could still argue that it would be.
Yeah, very much depends on how chilled out these HTS lot turn out to be. But yeah, it slightly bother me that no matter what happens in world events, it seems to end with more people coming into Britain. Do you know what I mean? Like, someone gets overthrown, someone bad comes in, someone good comes in. Like, yeah, we're just going to come to Britain and stay forever. Because in theory, yeah, people should be going back, and not just from Britain, of course, but from Germany, where that was the catastrophic thing that did for Merkel, wasn't it? Letting in, 1.2 million.
Yeah, come one, come all. Wait a minute, that's a lot of people. I think that's how the German version of that went.
Yeah, and if there is a peace in Ukraine, there's a similar situation here. People going back, wanting to go back to rebuild the country. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think at the very least, you could argue that it's going to take the pressure off people. There are still obviously going to be economic migrants who want to come over, but we are, of the millions and millions of Syrians who are in the borders of already, so many of them are crossing back in the borders into Syria, going back home.
And it's also going to change the net figure for the UK because of the way that net works. A bigger number to subtract, so you could have a large incoming number, but then everyone just talks about the net. So it's almost giving Starmer potentially a year of easier numbers to deal with.
I see what you mean. Yeah, if more people leave, because people don't talk about the emigration.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see. Right, Nick, The Guardian, the immigration system, people do talk about it by the looks of it. As my wife always says, you can do something well or you can do it fast. You can't do both.
So its Home Office says only half of UK asylum decisions meet its quality standards. So they're saying, and it is The Guardian, let's all keep that in mind, that Rishi Sunak's push to clear backlog of claims is driving a huge increase in legal appeals. So there was more than 9,300 appeals between April and June. And the whole idea of the article is that actually this has become inefficient because you're trying to deal with these people, but you're not really looking into it properly. You can't. They introduced a 2-hour limit to asylum interviews, so you're not getting the whole picture. You're trying to smash these through quickly, but then you just end up with a load of legal appeals and it doesn't work. Yeah. That's the Guardian angle. The argument, just sort of to counter that, is that actually it doesn't believe that they really are at risk, and that they're just getting rid of people who were never actually at risk. But the Guardian are claiming, no, they probably are at risk, you just don't realise it, and thus the appeals.
But still, they're right to say, even if they're not at risk, you're leaving a loophole where then you've got to sit through another court case, another appeal. And some of the errors are like getting the wrong names, the wrong gender. This is transgenitals. This is exactly the kind of stuff we're talking about. If you can't get that right on a form...
Yeah, that is the problem. I mean, two things can be true at once, you know, in terms of the system can be somewhat broken and definitely exploited by bad actors, bad lawyers trying to game the system, which we have actually seen evidence of in the past. And also, there is the risk of sending back people who are genuinely at risk. And those two things. So it's hard. They've had to... The fact that it got to that point where there were just, 90,000 people on this backlog and there wasn't the investment, it was just everything on time. It's just been this constant catch-up. So as they are, and it's interesting to note that Labour have not gone back to how it was before. They are still trying to keep up with this to get on top of it. So
a lot of it feels like Bruce Almighty, where he just replies yes to all of the people asking God questions and then look at the mess, which is it's the small version of that, basically. Josh, The Guardian and even Labour are asking, who will Labour lose to in the next election?
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate call of it, actually. Labour's big majority is fragile and it has weak mandate for change, says report. Now, this is from a think tank, Compass. They're a left-wing think tank. And what they're kind of saying is that by appealing to the centre-right, which is that's what they sort of, they think that that's what won Labour the election, but actually 2/3 of people asked in this poll would actually go to a more left-wing option if given it, which kind of suits their outlook. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, the fact they sort of label it centre-right rather than what I would just say is centrist politics.
Far right, I think you mean far right.
Yeah, it's sort of telling.
There are some telling things. I mean, they talk about the regressive vote. They talk about Tory voters staying at home because reform split the regressive vote. So that was a bit of an alarm bell for me. And this group, Compass, is described on Wikipedia as a membership-based organisation and thus seeks to be a pressure group and a force for political organisation and mobilisation. Let's keep that in mind, because often polls are tools of persuasion, or Cialdini's word, persuasion. They're not just gauging the temperature, they're trying to influence something. So there is that. But it's not necessarily wrong that Labour might look more to the left than trying to get the reform vote, because certainly those independents cause them loads of trouble. But the only way to get them back is to go fully anti-Israel, which I'm not sure that Labour are going to do. So... yeah, maybe maybe there are nutters out there who look at Labour and think, you know what, I want them to be more like the Lib Dems and the Green. They're not left enough for me. Yeah, maybe that is right. But then again, can you trust this?
Well, what they say here is very... They also go, Labour's election strategy was hugely effective in securing seats. That's where you just end the conversation. However, there's no however. But that's what worked. That's the purpose of an election, is to win the most seats. And so they sound terrifyingly close to all the Corbynites who, after the 2019, no, look at the purport in the 2017. No, look at what happened here. Look at the votes. They lost.
It's the reverse Corbyn, isn't it? We won the argument, but not the election. And they're like, well, they won the election, but not the argument. Well, what were you playing at? You were trying to win an election, weren't you?
To be very fair, though, they say this strategy of not being the Tories is a time bomb, and that is true. You know, after 5 months, Starmer's still having resets and going, look at what the Tories did on immigration. That'll work for a while, because what the Tories did on immigration was so bad. That's not going to work forever, so that part is true.
But also it worked for a long while in 2010, didn't it? There was a long while of, the mess that Gordon Brown left us. It wasn't like 3 weeks in they suddenly stopped mentioning that. So I think...
What would be the time limit for you, Steve?
About a year and a half.
OK, yeah, we're only 5 months in, yeah.
Right, another jobbed, but still to come. The BBC brings balance by being nice about Assad and anti-Semitism. That's not in the same story, but could be. And why you could be banned from joining the MI5. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so a cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud, the best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's have another quick look at Monday's monothematic front pages. The Metro has Assad falls, but what now? Express, delight in Syria as rebels force Assad to flee to Russia. The Telegraph uses Assad flees to Moscow as its headline. Daily Mail, Assad is toppled, but is worse to come. Guardian, rebels seize Damascus as Assad flees to Moscow. And the Daily Star ventures off theme with tis the season to be jolly windy. I'm sure you can guess all of the details in that. Nick, the Independent, Suella says that she respects her husband's independence. Another swinging story?
How dare you, Steve? It's Reform's top target, Suella Braverman, opens up over her husband joining Farage's party. And this is Rael Braverman, pronunciation pending. And she doesn't mind that he's off to Reform. She says, my husband and I have a healthy respect for each other's independence. He doesn't tell me how to do my job, and I don't tell him how to pick a political party. And Reform is saying they'd love Suella to join and she'd find a much happier home there. But I suppose if you're Suella Braverman, you've got your seat, you know, you've been in the Tories a long time, you kind of established, it's a bit of a Jerry Maguire thing to leave. He leaves and only the goldfish goes with him and Renée Zellweger. You're thinking, do I want to leave the establishment? Because although Reform are doing well, they're up and coming in votes, I think they're going to do very well. But in infrastructure, they're not at the level of the Tories. So you can see why you might be worried about crossing over. And maybe she can come back in the Tories in the future as a leadership candidate again.
Well, I have an exclusive.
Okay.
I met Suella Braverman last night.
Right.
Had a meeting with her. At
a meeting?
Yeah, about Reform.
I went up and said hello.
Yeah.
And I can reveal exclusively here on GB News that she does not watch Headliners.
Oh.
Yeah, very
I heard she watches when I'm on.
Is that what it is?
She has someone to clip up my bit.
She said, what's your name? And I said, Josh, I was like, Josh had so-called Headliners.
I'm told she has someone to clip up just my bits and put it in like a package.
You'll like this in that she was very nice.
I've met her here. I said hello.
Yeah,
She's very nice.
And you know, to be fair to you, Nick, you've been a proponent of her for a long time.
I have.
You have, back in the day.
Back in the day, I was the first to say she would run as leader.
And I'd buy into the Guardian stuff. She's far right and all this stuff, and turned out a load of stuff she was right. And that's why I said you were right about a load of stuff. And she's very nice. She's very nice.
She is nice. That's the thing. I hate this idea that she's this horrible person.
Yeah.
She seems really nice to me.
I rarely leave the house, but I actually did turn up to last night's Christmas party, and I mentioned to a mate of mine that she was there, and he said, "Did you chat with her?" I was like, "Well, no, I know we don't have anything in common." It wouldn't have taken. I'm fairly sure we wouldn't have got on. So I didn't bother.
Really? You didn't
waste the time.
I don't believe that. I think you both want what's best for this country.
Nah, have you seen me? I'm not that kind
You don't
of
even
guy.
want that. You don't even want that.
I want to see it burn, Nick. Have you not noticed?
You're the Joker.
Yeah, in many ways. On some shows.
I had you more as down a penguin man. More of a penguin man.
Thank you. Yeah. Is like the modern adaptation or the really fat guy version?
Well, viewers can decide.
Thanks. Nick, The Telegraph, the BBC, on a sad going with a good people on both sides vibe.
Sort of. It's BBC presenter John Simpson under fire for calling Assad weak rather than wicked. And it was a perhaps misguided tweet or ex-post where he said Bashar al-Assad has done many evil things, but he's weak rather than wicked. His family members, Iran and especially Russia, told him what to do, and he feebly did it. In person, I found him meek and anxious to please, the reverse of the traditional dictator. That last bit sounds a bit like maybe just boasting he's met him, a bit like Josh with Swallow Brown. But, he could have phrased this better.
No dictator.
I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but he could have phrased it better. It's a sort of banality of evil take, and it's a take that says he's the puppet of Putin. But therefore, you could have said something like, he's a coward, he does what Putin says, but his cowardice amounts to a form of evil because he's enacting the orders. The phrase weak rather than wicked makes it sound like he's not a bad guy, actually, and that's the problem.
Totally. It's like Hitler was a vegetarian vibes. Yeah. Actually, it's worse than that. And it's so... The failing is on a moral level, I would argue. You can be weak and wicked, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing. Like, it felt like the whole tweet was to sort of, as you say, I met him type thing, but also to sort of somehow justify it, excuse it, that, I met him and he was sort of nice. And the fact is, he was a truly evil human being. He ordered, when it was all kicking off in 2011, one of the things that started the sort of descent of the country was he ordered a bunch of boys who'd been caught graffitiing.
Yeah.
And he'd got them to be, they were tortured, teenage boys. One of them was castrated. I mean, that was on him. He did that. And then you have chemical attacks and stuff like that. So to write any kind of tweet to excuse this kind of the most debauched, evil kind of behaviour is like, what are you doing? And this is from Mr. BBC impartiality. That the hypocrisy there is just like, and you've seen over the last, however, as this has become more in the news, all of these sort of Assadists come out of the woodwork. They've always been there, and you see someone like George Galloway, who's like repeatedly sort of praised him in the past, and now using this to kind of, it's sort of implying that it was actually Israel who's responsible for this, because and October 7th even was like some sort of flag inside, false flag job. I mean, so you're seeing the cranks who've kind of supported him in the past, Assad, coming out, and whether this is on the borderline of those things.
I also think it's interesting that you were using "is a vegetarian" as a compliment. I think most people watching would see that as yet another reason to not.
Oh, I see.
Promising painter, though.
Josh, the Daily Mail. Now, I don't mix up correlation with causation often, but anti-Semitism increased fourfold during the time when Louis Schaefer was on TV more. Discuss.
Yeah, protesters slammed tidal wave of anti-Semitism in Britain as 32,000 people march in London calling for more action on extremism. And this is yet another story that I am just right embedded in the middle of.
Googled it last night, did you?
No, this one is there. I was there today, marching, one of those 32,000 people in the rain and the cold. It was a very touching how many non-Jewish people came out as well. Because I think this is something, people felt that this is an issue that affects all of us, people in the West, seeing this anti-Semitism on the streets in the West, seeing our government, basically, and the police force doing nothing in some cases. And And it's been scary. You know, you had a school bus of kids that go to my children's school having, you know, rocks thrown at them and being abused. You have a last week also, the same week, you had a Jewish young girl being glassed. I mean, it's scary out there, and so people have had enough. And it was great, man. It was great. I mean, I probably got a cold from it. Yeah.
They should have organised it in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you've got anti-Semitic instances of cases, hate cases, have gone overtaken Islamophobic, which was instanced for the first time. But because of the proportions of population, that's actually, if you're Jewish, you're 12 times more likely to be a victim of a hate crime.
Yeah.
And also, I'm just going to say it, how many of those hate crimes committed against Muslims were carried out by Jews? I'd be surprised if there were any. How many of the hate crimes carried out against Jews were by Muslims? And there's going to be at least some, if not more than some.
And Nick, just balance in the world of protests?
Well, I suppose I could offer some balance in that I understand this sort of showing of numbers and showing of strength. I question whether marches do that much, having been on the Iraq War March. Tony Blair completely ignored 1 million people. And my concern is, I'm only saying actually the same as this top Israeli official here who says it's a combination of the radical left and Islamic extremism. Really, immigration and wokeness in education are the two main things that seem to have caused it. So that's where my focus would be. But I suppose there's no harm going on a march as well.
Thank you for your support.
Well, yeah, I don't go on marches, so that's a general cynicism that I have.
Yeah.
But I think, well, my only concern is, do people make the link between not backing pro-immigration policies, you know what I mean, and anti-Semitism? That's only my concern. Maybe they are now making that link.
I think people have seen. I think it's definitely come to the fore. So.
Okay.
Or people, you know, the anti-Western sentiment.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, to the Daily Mail. You can't apply for the MI5 if you're white, but if you're that much of a good spy, you'd be able to fake it. Have you not seen Dr. No?
Good point, Steve. So security services slammed for racist internship that doesn't let white students apply for roles at MI5, MI6 and GCHQ. There's been a lot of publicity for this. We've seen Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage tweeting about it, saying they'll end this kind of anti-white discrimination. And that's good to see because they're, in my opinion, Reform UK are the only party, mainstream party, that we've seen be consistently against anti-white discrimination. The Tories are jumping on board now. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has branded it racist. But the Tories presided over this kind of thing for 14 years, so I don't really buy it. And it is just racism as far as I can see. And why? I mean, OK, so you're allowed to apply to this if you were a black, Asian, mixed heritage or ethnic minority and from a socially or economically disadvantaged background. But of course, it leaves out all the disadvantaged white people. And we know that poor white boys are the least likely demographic to go to university. We know that white people are behind in their earnings, behind loads of demographics like Chinese people and so on in the UK. So why this? Now, MI5 points out and MI6 that it's legal, it's a lawful measure used by intelligence services to encourage people from underrepresented groups to consider careers, blah, blah, blah. Yes, and it's legal because of it, presumably because of that loophole in the Equalities Act where if a group's seen as oppressed, you know, you can do things like this. But is it right? Of course, it's legal and the prevailing ideology backs this kind of thing, but is it right? I think most people, or many people now, I can't say most people, a lot of people now are saying this kind of thing is wrong.
Did you catch the Weasley word bit in the story as well, where they say, well, this is to try and correct an issue of underrepresentation in our staff, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a job anyway. You still have to apply to a job. You're effectively saying you've got to apply to a job, but don't worry, you'll get it, because we're trying to fix the problem earlier on.
Yeah, Poor White Boys is the name of my hip-hop group. I'd be very interested to see statistics of how much poor white boys are represented. Are they underrepresented as well? Yeah. If there was a case where they needed more native Arab speakers, and that makes total sense. But when they're just sort of opening it up to everybody who's underrepresented, but not... Yeah. I would... the stereotype of the MI5, MI6 is posh white boys, or even posh white girls as well. So, I'd like to say, I'd like to see some statistics.
I'd like to see a working-class James Bond. That would be great. Yes. What are you drinking, Mr. Bond? Pint, and don't you shake it. Imagine.
It's like you're an open spot from from 10 years ago.
Very much like that. Still to come, why you are getting Christmas all wrong, and a story that mixes religion and wrestling. One's all made up and fake, and you can finish that one yourself. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, is this a good idea? Because you are leaving yourself open to all sorts of criticism as a family if you let cameras into your house.
I have to admit I had big reservations, and Jacob gave all his children the choice whether to appear or not, and I discussed it with my own because we were in Somerset over the summer and the camera crews were around, and in fact me and my husband decided that our children would not be in it at all. The two younger ones didn't really know what the question was, and the 13-year-old was happier to not be in the spotlight. And they never have been. And I think that's where Jacob took less of a risk, because his children have been photographed left, right and centre from the day they were born, in newspapers, in cartoons, taking the mickey out of their names and whatever.
Are they going to become the new Kardashians? Does your brother even know who Kim Kardashian is?
Oh, I'm not entirely sure I do, so... yeah, she's very famous for being quite curvaceous, I believe. But I don't think they're anywhere near that category. I've seen a couple of articles where they do a compare and contrast, and they don't really match up. But I think this is quite from the bits I've seen, quite a light-hearted look at a very different type of lifestyle to most people, but at the people behind it who are, you know, normal human beings.
And Jacob's wife there we saw talking. What is she like? What are we expecting to hear from her?
Helena's brilliant. I had the great pleasure of introducing them as adults.
Your fault.
It's all my fault that there are now 6 extra Rees-Moggs around. But she is a fantastic, fun, but very, very steely, as you say, woman who knows her own mind.
I think she's going to be the star of the show.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Headliners, where you can get in touch with your comments. gbnews.com/yoursay. I found a good one. It says, great headliner lineup tonight. And this time, it's not written by me. Someone called B. I really should use a better fake account, shouldn't I? But B actually likes this line.
Better than S.
Yeah.
An A.
SNA. Yeah, the Syrian what? Right, Josh, to the Daily Mail, where there's a cross between the Christian church and wrestling, which sounds like something Justin Welby would cover up.
Nice. Fighting for my religion. Church combines sermons and Christian WWE-style wrestling show in bid to attract congregants. This is St. Peter's Church in Shipley, and they're hosting Kingdom Wrestling. And it seems like this whole wrestling... Jesus did a lot of wrestling, with the devil. The snake, didn't he? I think, you know, he did a lot of wrestling. And then Christians do a lot of wrestling with their desires and sins and things like that.
Homosexuality, yeah.
OK, yeah. And then they've sort of gone, let's have a literal wrestling match. So it's all a lot of focus on wrestling. I don't know, Nick,
is this what it is, Nick?
Well, it's hard to know whether to be offended or charmed by the pure Americana of it. It's the most American thing, wrestling combined with the sort of evangelical Christianity. It's like George Washington eating an apple pie, wearing a cowboy hat, do you know what I mean, on the 4th of July. It's just... I loved WWE, formerly WWF. It was so good. It didn't strike me as the most Christian thing when I was watching it growing up. There's quite a lot. It was very on PC, which I liked. Some will be appalled by this, but then again, if it gets people back to the church, I don't know. I'm a bit
Really,
worried
though,
about injuries as well.
Come for the wrestling, stay for the salvation of the soul. I'm not sure you'll convert that many people from wrestling fans to Christians.
Depends how good the wrestling is, doesn't it? I mean, but if they're amateurs, I'm a bit worried because that's very nasty stuff. People get really badly injured, even in the pros.
But no, not if they've got Jesus on their side.
Well, that is true.
Yeah, but also the Reverend Thomas, she said she admitted she loved the acting and the storylines of good triumphing over evil. It's not storylines, it's real, Reverend.
Yeah, it's true.
Wrestling.
Wrestling is real.
Nick, the Daily Mail, it looks like Jesus has been lying about his age.
Well, this is even more controversial. Scientists reveal the exact date of Jesus' birth.
This is controversial.
And say it wasn't on December 25th, AD 1. Now, this really bothers me because they keep saying it dates his birth back to the before 4 BC at the very... How can it be BC? He is the sea. He can't be born
You must have heard
BC.
this before. This is like... You've never seen this story before?
No, I've lived in
this is like, okay.
small cave.
No, this is like a... There's a very familiar...
Yeah,
I thought I'd invented a new joke.
Christmas is because of pagans, and he was not born in that year.
But he can't be BC if he's the sea, right? We agree on that.
But they only retrospectively counted BC.
It's basically, it's a 1,500-year-old clerical error. That sort of, and it's quite interesting about why it was different, because there was a tyrant. They didn't want to. This guy around 500 AD or whatever, Common Era as my people call it.
Right.
See, an East Roman monk named Dionysius Exiguus or whatever. He didn't want to tie it to this emperor who was like a really evil dude. So they basically messed up the maths. But what's also interesting is things like the shepherds and whatnot. It shows it's more likely to have been spring, because they're talking about, like, shepherds in the winter, they'd all go back into...
It's funny as if Josh is standing in as the new archbishop, because Welby's gone. He's riffing it. He's been forced to riff it on day one.
But so they've sort of basically what they've said is it was most likely spring around 5 pre-Jesus.
I love the idea that you think that BC 1 just suddenly kicked in. Everyone's like, why have the calendars changed? I don't know. We'll find out in a few years. They wouldn't have known, would they? But anyway, just time to get a bit on this one, Josh. The Guardian. People think that dating apps like admin. I've never done admin that led to a one-night stand. I mostly have self-assessment.
Very good. It feels like admin. Why are people falling out of love with dating apps? 1.4 million people have left online dating over the last year. And experts say it's because it feels like a chore rather than a social activity. But I wonder if there's actually deeper movements there of wanting to connect more in the flesh, to trust in the universe, to go a more sort of organic route. Yeah. You know, go out to bars, socialise again. I've never had the dating app thing. I met my wife before all of this, but it feels very clinical.
I don't go on them. I just get people messaging me, and I'm never sure if they're real or if they're moles for, like, political opponents.
No, there are hot Russians in your area, Nick.
Are there?
You should
I've
definitely
missed
go
so
with
many
it.
opportunities.
Listen, the show's nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Monday's front pages. We can go with the Metro. Assad falls, but what now? The Express, delight in Syria as rebels force Assad to flee to Russia. The Telegraph, Assad flees to Moscow. The Daily Mail has Assad is toppled, but is worse to come. The Guardian, rebels seize Damascus as Assad flees to Moscow. And the Star, 'tis the season to be jolly windy. I'm sure you probably noticed that one. Well, that's it for tonight's show. My thanks to the guests, Josh and Nick. Simon Evans will be back tomorrow night at 11 p.m, joined by Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer doing the work. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay exactly where you are. Breakfast on the way next. Till the next one, have a good one.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud. The best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 7 o'clock. Russian state media says Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is in Moscow with his family, with Kremlin sources saying they've been granted asylum there. It comes as people are emptying the streets as rebel forces impose a curfew in Damascus after taking control of the capital, marking a dramatic fall in Assad's regime and forcing him to flee.